I'm going to take it straight out to Geoffrey in Seoul. And first of all, can you put this into context for us? Because it looks as though this trial could potentially take at least 18 months. Does J.Y. Lee, the warrant and the arrest, does he remain behind bars for that amount of time?
It's not clear whether he will actually remain behind bars throughout that time. That really depends on what the South Korean legal system decides. But what is unusual here is that J.Y. Lee did have an arrest warrant issued against him. His father was ensnared in a similar scandal about 10 years ago, 9 years ago, and he never had an arrest warrant issued. So that really says that the government is really talking business here, that this is, they're really going after one of South Korea's most powerful companies in a way that we haven't seen quite yet.
David, it's interesting. The share price doesn't seem to have been particularly affected by this current scandal at the conglomerate. It's incredible how the mighty do fall, but how much do you think this really does affect business?
Well, you know, with Samsung, when it rains, it pours. I mean, they're still sort of recovering and not even fully at all recovered from the exploding phone problem that they've had. And, I would say it's a company that's been in a lot of sort of it's sort of like in suspension with his father, who's really the CEO, so ill that nobody really knows who's in charge. He's been running the company, this guy Lee, who's now under arrest because his father, who they can't really get rid of because it's a family-controlled company, has been so ill. But, that's not a good situation at a time when they're facing such a massive challenge as they've faced recently with these phones. So this is a pretty daunting development. But it just goes to show how negative sentiment is becoming globally against the powerful, I'd say. I think it sort of dovetails with a lot of other global developments. What's happened in Korea with the impeachment and everything, it's a very difficult time there.
Yes, Geoffrey, if you can paint of what is going on in South Korea in general, and indeed, this is the second time that they tried to get this arrest warrant. Why do you think it was successful the second time round?
Well, this particular judge has more of a reputation for not being pro-business as the other judge. The previous judge who rejected the warrant, to be honest, we don't really know what happened in the court that day. There's no transcript that's been published. But we do know that the previous judge did have a stronger pro-business streak. And that may have explained, partly at least why J.Y. Lee did not have the warrant issued. In South Korea, it's actually quite common for prosecutors, judges, politicians, and others to weigh the business interests of the nation when bringing criminal charges against leaders. This has happened to other South Korean leaders. There's a saying there called the Korea discount, which means that shares are often undervalued because there's not much confidence in a lot of these business leaders, and it's quite common for them to face governance and corruption scandals and to be accused of influence peddling. It's something that's not surprising to South Koreans.
And Geoffrey, just to you again, does Samsung become in disarray because of their de facto leader in jail? Or paint us the picture of what happened under the father. This isn't the first time the leader of the business has been tainted with scandal, and the business seems to be able to be directed by that very person.
Well, I've interviewed hundreds of people in Samsung at some of the highest levels, and they very consistently said that when the chairman is gone, the business activities are almost always not affected. Samsung, despite what's happening, despite the governance, the poor governance up top, they do have a lot of the world's most talented designers, engineers. They do make very good hardware, and I've never heard of the actual business itself being interrupted. And that's something that Samsung really has to deal with. That's something that they have to grapple with, because they've built this empire over the past 20 years that just spans across around 70 affiliates. They make everything. I mean, they make ships, they make chips, they make smartphones, they make all the parts inside the smartphones. And a single leader, J.Y. Lee, he may be intelligent, he may be a great diplomat for the company, but he's not someone who can actually run every single business in that way. They really do rely on their staff engineers and their managers to get things done.